বন্যা বাংলাদেশের অতি পরিচিত একটি প্রাকৃতিক দুর্যোগ। প্রতি বছর এই দুর্যোগে ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত হয় দেশের লাখ লাখ শিশু। সম্প্রতি দেশে আঘাত হেনেছে বিগত ৩৪ বছরের সবচেয়ে ভয়াবহ বন্যা। ইউনিসেফের তথ্য বলছে এই বন্যায় ঝুঁকিতে রয়েছে ২০ লাখ শিশু। আরও জানাচ্ছে সৈয়দা সাদিয়া।
বন্যা বাংলাদেশের দুর্বিষহ প্রাকৃতিক দুর্যোগগুলোর মধ্যে একটি। সম্প্রতি দেশে ঘটে যাওয়া বন্যা ছিল বিগত ৩ দশকের সবচেয়ে ভয়াবহ বন্যা। চলতি বছরের এ বন্যায় ঝুঁকিতে রয়েছে পূর্বাঞ্চলের প্রায় ২০ লাখ শিশু, যার মধ্যে এই পর্যন্ত প্রাণ হারিয়েছে ৫৯ জন শিশু। চিলড্রেন্স ক্লাইমেট রিস্ক ইন্ডেক্স অনুযায়ী বাংলাদেশের শিশুরা বিশ্বের সবচেয়ে বেশি জলবায়ু ও পরিবেশগত ঝুঁকির শিকার। ইউনিসেফের তথ্যানুযায়ী দেশের সাম্প্রতিক বন্যা ও মে মাসের ঘূর্ণিঝড় রেমালের কারণে ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত হয়েছে ৫০ লক্ষ শিশু। এদের কেউ হারিয়েছে প্রিয়জন, কেউ বা হারিয়েছে ঘরবাড়ি ও শিক্ষা প্রতিষ্ঠান। এ সকল শিশুদেরকে পুষ্টিকর খাদ্য সরবরাহ সহ বিভিন্নভাবে ত্রাণ দিয়ে সহযোগিতা করছে ইউনিসেফ বাংলাদেশ। এছাড়া বন্যার্তদের সহযোগিতায় এগিয়ে এসেছে দেশের আপামর জনসাধারণও। দেশের বর্তমান বন্যা পরিস্থিতি নিয়ে এটিএন বাংলা শিশুতোষ অনুষ্ঠান আমরা করব জয়কে একটি বিশেষ ইন্টারভিউ দিয়েছে ইউনিসেফের চিফ রিপ্রেজেন্টেটিভ মিসেস রানা ফ্লাওয়ার্স।
On a topic of such important for everyone in Bangladesh, and that is the recent floods. Many people don't know, but the children of Bangladesh are the most exposed in the world to climate and environmental hazards. And this has a huge impact on every child right, from the lack of access to nutritious food and safe water, to them missing out on school and facing increased risks of being exposed to violence. The list of the impact, it goes on and on. These floods are a sad example of the impact that the climate crisis has on children here and globally. Only in this specific situation, over 2 million children are at risk as floods swept through their homes, their schools, their villages. These are the worst floods in over 3 decades in this area. And this is a region that was not used to dealing with the kind of catastrophe, the needs, and even more dire as preparedness was missing. Since the onset of the flooding, we found that access to all the services that children and families need has been disrupted. Healthcare facilities that children and mothers go to for vaccination, for antenatal care, they're inundated with water. Their supplies have been washed away. Water and sanitation facilities, they're damaged. And people are not able to get clean, safe water. About 7,000 of the schools in the affected areas, they're closed. And others that remain open, well, they're being used as shelters. UNICEF and all of the partners on the ground are reaching to the most vulnerable people, especially the children, with critical life-saving supplies. So far, we've reached around 850,000 people in the most affected districts. And as you can imagine, there remain problems to access segments of the population still, to bring them the safe water that they desperately need. For example, as a result of the dirty water, we're seeing the outbreak of diarrheal diseases, and we're seeing that particularly among the children. We've distributed around 350,000 packets of what we call oral rehydration salts, and they're a special salt that you put in water that is designed to stop the diarrhea and to give the child the nutrients that they need. We're also providing nutritional supplements for the prevention of malnutrition among children, especially very young ones that have not been reached immediately after the flooding. We also need to improve sanitation to prevent the waterborne diseases that are already breaking out. We've installed floating latrines and temporary tube wells at the shelters in the flood-affected districts, and we've distributed hygiene kits. We also continue to support the vaccination of children who missed their scheduled vaccine due to the impact of the floods. Tragically, families have lost their homes, they've lost loved ones, livestock and livelihoods to these floods. And in those situations, providing mental health support, psychosocial support to children and adolescents and their caregivers through social workers and counsellors at the shelters as well as at the household levels is incredibly important. So much more needs to be done. for all the affected children and their families whose lives have been upended by this flooding. Many children and their families are still in urgent need of cash assistance, safe drinking water, hygiene kits, emergency latrines, even hygiene pads, oral rehydration salts, emergency life-saving medicines. We need to treat the sick newborns and children as quickly as possible and to support the pregnant women, to give birth safely, and to ensure that children are able to return to schools. There's also a critical requirement for non-food items such as candles, lighters, water containers, tarpaulins, along with the need to provide cooked food and food packages, including more therapeutic products to treat cases of severe acute malnutrition among children.
তিনি বলেন, দুঃখজনকভাবে বন্যা পরিস্থিতিতে ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত শিশুর সংখ্যা আরও বাড়তে পারে।
Sadly, yes. Right now we're still in the monsoon season and we have the cyclone season ahead. We've got over 2 million affected children in eastern Bangladesh alone. But given the multiple risks children are exposed to, especially considering the seasons that we are occupying, that number might increase. We need to continue working together as relief measures still are not reaching many communities. And we need to be thinking ahead about the communities that might be affected in the future to prepare as much as possible.
24 বন্যায় সবচেয়ে বেশি ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত হয়েছে ফেনী, নোয়াখালী, কুমিল্লা, সিলেট, খাগড়াছড়ি ইত্যাদি অঞ্চল। বর্তমানে এই সকল অঞ্চলের প্রায় 7,000-এরও বেশি শিক্ষা প্রতিষ্ঠান বন্ধ রয়েছে।
Now in the recent floods, over 5.8 million people, including 2.3 million children, have been affected, with many stranded without food and relief for too long a period. Children have lost their families, their homes and their schools, and they are in desperate need of food, clean water, safe toilets, emergency relief supplies. You know, UNICEF is trying to reach the children and their families who are most in need. And as you said, our response very much is focused on the most effective districts. That's the 5 most affected. And even within those, in Feni, for example, we've not been able to reach a number of children because the roads are still not accessible. The water levels are receding, but their needs remain dire. And in these 5 districts, we've got about 1.8 million people who need relief support, and we're on the ground and providing those life-saving supplies that the children and their families need. We understand that more needs to be done. And that's why we appeal for more funds so that we can reach all of the children, all of the women who've been impacted.
দেশের বর্তমান বন্যা পরিস্থিতিতে শিশুদের পাশে দাঁড়ানোর দায়িত্ব সকলেরই। সৈয়দা সাদিয়া, আমরা করব জয়, ATN বাংলা, ঢাকা।